Welcome, everybody. Jonathan Kirschner, and we are here. Welcome back to a podcast on leadership. And today we have Reese Haydon. I'm so excited to have Reese here today with us for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, he's come all the way from the Bay Area to our city of brotherly love in Philadelphia. Welcome, Reese. Thank you. I hope the flight was
very easy.
Easy.
Yeah,
it's easy.
Long, but easy.
Yeah, you're here. It's a great place. Philly's a wonderful place. I'm also really excited because Reese has such an extensive background in leadership, which is what this podcast is all about and my greatest passion. And thirdly, not just leadership broadly, though I would say you've probably seen pretty much everything at this point. Leadership specifically in a context called tech. Right, so Reese has come from his master's in IO psychology to a boutique marketing agency to Cisco, a massive publicly traded tech Goliath, to Dropbox just after IPO, right? So you're high growth, incredible. I mean, who doesn't have Dropbox? I've got Dropbox. I will never leave my Dropbox.
Me too. Happy customer.
Yes. And then to Salesforce, which literally created the CRM, right? Which is kind of in many ways like revolutionized how we do business. So Reese has been an expert, a subject matter expert in this domain of leadership, whether it's identifying and finding the right leaders or developing leaders and creating leadership pipelines for these respective organizations. And I'm particularly interested in your perspective on like what makes a leader amazing in tech. What are some of the pitfalls that you've seen? And then obviously we're going to have to talk about AI and disruption.
Oh, a little bit, probably.
Obviously. So, but maybe just to get us started, like, can you just bring us on the journey, right? Like, you started off and I imagine at some point you're like, I want to work with people. And that guided you to this master's program in IO Psych?
Kind of.
Ish.
Yeah, it started when I was in high school. I was being interviewed by a friend who was writing the yearbook, and she wanted to take my picture and asked me what I wanted to go study for college. And I was trying to avoid her. I was running around. Really didn't want my picture taken that day, but eventually I turned around and said, I'm going to go get my MBA in HR from this university where I was living. Now, I didn't get my MBA in HR, but that still spoke to a curiosity and a passion I had about the field of HR and people at work. So that's what, when I actually ended up going to undergrad, led to me pursuing some studies in HR. I even applied in the management school for the HR degree, the bachelor's program. Didn't get accepted, unfortunately. No hard feelings. But I did get accepted to the information systems major, which was another excellent major. I learned a ton. The faculty were amazing, and I was really glad that I got to be part of the business school. While I was there, you have chances to take electives. So, of course, I took the HR-related electives, and one that really stuck out to me was managerial leadership development.
And I love it.
Yeah.
So that you're already right there. You're learning information systems, which is essentially tech.
Yes.
And HR, managerial leadership. That's fantastic. Okay, so maybe help me understand, like, is leadership or, to what extent does context, from your perspective, I mean, I do have a perspective on this, but to what extent does context sort of like dictate what types of leadership you need to manifest in order to be successful?
I think leadership should always be contextual.
Okay.
I think there are traits that are relatively stable when we think about the stereotype of what is a good leader or who do we think is leader-like. We'll probably name a few adjectives to describe that person. But I think a successful leader is able to adapt to the context, to the needs of the team, to the needs of the organization, to achieve their goals. I don't think there's a single playbook that's right for every leader in every situation. I think they just need to be very skilled at being agile.
Well, so tech obviously is moving fast. It's the industry of all the industries where arguably, the stakes are the highest, right? You get it right, you're like to the moon. You get it wrong in 3 months, you could be like
Stakes are the highest. We're not a hospital system.
Okay, this is true. This is true from a purely, monetarily, standpoint. But yes, in terms of things that actually matter. But maybe you could help me understand, going on this thread of context. Like when you were at Cisco and when you were at Dropbox and now at Salesforce, like were there particular competencies or leadership skills that would make a leader better in those respective environments? Or is it just like great leadership what gets you successful in all three of those?
Let's say yes and.
Yes,
I think.
Give me a yes and.
Sure. So
Okay.
For Cisco, I think maturity and scale were the two qualities or strengths that I saw in the most successful leaders that I was able to witness while I was there. If you think about Cisco as a business, 70,000 people, an extremely complicated product ecosystem and how they go to market, you need to be able to scale as a leader for you to be able to lead your organization. And sometimes these organizations are larger, double, sometimes even triple the size of other smaller companies that are out there. It's quite often the case where they're leading huge teams globally that are responsible for just one part of their product portfolio. So you think about a company that's existed for so long, essentially invented the internet, is behind the connectivity behind a lot of the devices and the systems we use today. Of course, they have to be good at scale.
So like that would be like a guiding principle in decision making, whereas if you're in a smaller startup or even like a Dropbox at a certain point, at least in its evolution, you might make decisions based on like let's experiment or let's create some like let's take a big risk. At Cisco, it's all about like we don't do it if it's not going to scale. Or I know John Chambers had like a huge influence obviously on the ways of Cisco.
Yeah, he was really known for leading the company through market transitions and being able to capture market transitions to keep the company relevant. When you think about a company that size, it's been around for that long, it takes a very skilled leader to be able to do that. So that's why he was so successful for so long, and I think he's been attributed that as one of the elements of his playbook that makes him unparalleled in a lot of ways.
So scale and maturity were like paramount for Cisco.
I'm sure there's a lot more, but that's what I remember.
And when you got to Dropbox, like, was the same true, or were there like different, characteristics needed to?
I think for the identity of Dropbox, the type of company that they are and who they were when I joined, they valued energy, innovation, experimentation, and growth. And so when I describe my experience at Cisco compared to Dropbox, I say Cisco is where I really learned best practice for the work that I do. I feel like I had a playbook that was proven. I learned really how to do things well and how to scale my own work and how to scale leadership. At Dropbox, I learned how to innovate and how to experiment and challenge my own thinking and challenge the organization and come up with something new that would work for the context that we were in today.
What was that shift for you like, going from something that's maybe more predictable and certain because there's so much thought going into, is this meet the requirements for scale, versus something that's much more agile and experimental? Was that an easy transition for you? Or?
I would say easy, but I would say it's exciting.
And
I leaned into it, and I think it gave me a lot of freedom to do things that I wasn't able to do earlier in my career and wasn't able to do in such an established, proven organization, because, as those organizations grow, they come up with policies and procedures and swim lanes and everything that kind of makes it sometimes difficult to try something new.
Okay.
So I had a lot more free space at Dropbox to innovate and create something that was right for them.
I love that. I love that. So then moving into now Salesforce, which is another, I don't know, at least Fortune 100, I imagine, if not Fortune 50 organization, behemoth, more similar in size to Cisco, presumably.
Very similar.
How is that context, and what kinds of like leadership characteristics would drive success in that environment?
Absolutely, innovation for sure.
Innovation,
I mean,
okay.
that is what has been attributed to our success for so long. We have stayed successful and been as successful as we are because we are able to innovate on a dime, and that makes things very interesting inside a company that is moving so quickly and can change directions in a matter of days. For 70,000 plus people in a company like that, you have to be unique to be able to be successful and thrive. And I think it's mostly attributed to agility and humility for leaders who want to be successful there, but certainly agility.
Agility, so moving really fast. And I imagine, like, I just wonder if, I mean, you always have to move fast in tech. With AI, does that just speed things up even faster? Like, does that increase the velocity? Is it just basically like a race?
Absolutely.
It's a race.
It's always a race.
Okay. So then I guess, we kind of talked a little bit about some of the, success ingredients to being in these environments, whether it's like a focus on like scale, which requires a lot of thoughtfulness and maturity, adaptability and experimentation, and then this notion of agility. Where, in your experience, do leaders go wrong? Right? Like, what are some of the risks for derailment that you see in this world of tech?
I think there are two for me that I think about a lot. One on agility is when leaders hold on too tightly to the way that they are used to doing things, or the way that they think things should be done, or don't demonstrate agility and flexibility and curiosity when context changes, because context is always changing, especially right now with AI and what we're seeing in the industry. So thinking that you have the answers is one pitfall for sure. I think the second one is sometimes in tech and in high growth companies, we will have a tendency to promote people into leadership because they're really good at what they do.
Like technically.
Yeah, whatever the position they're in.
An incredible product leader. Or product manager.
Product. Now we'll make them a product executive. Now they have to lead a team of people to do the thing that they were doing so well. And a really common pitfall for them is when their team isn't doing things or performing at the level that they would expect, leaders might dive in and do it themselves. And that doesn't scale, going back to scale. So I would say it's those two. How can you be agile, and how can you also figure out how to develop your team so that you can operate at the altitude you need to, because you can't do everything.
I love that. So so this notion of, so I think about, we're both Hogan geeks, right?
Yeah, I love Hogan.
So high prudence would be
I am
great
not high prudent.
in some ways. Neither am I. I'm kind of low. But high prudence would be a marker of somebody who is systematic, methodical, and you want that person in a very sort of operational role that requires that level of methodicalness and systematic thinking. But that can actually be a liability in some ways if we need to constantly adapt and experiment, right?
Yeah. Well, and if you flip it the other direction, if you have somebody that's always out there in front being innovative but has no way of putting the structure around it to execute the big innovative idea, what's actually going to happen? And that's, I think, more common, especially at very senior leader levels, where you'll have a big, innovative, flashy leader who wants to push things forward, but isn't supported by a team around them that's skilled at the technical and the structure and the execution.
And it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall, basically. Right. Wow. That's really interesting. So I want to go back just to one thing. You said the word maturity when we were talking about Cisco and like how important that was. Like, how would you describe maturity in this context of leadership? Like, what does it mean to be a mature leader or to bring maturity?
I think maybe an example is a good way to illustrate this for how I think about maturity in leadership positions, we have to make difficult decisions sometimes, and sometimes those difficult decisions have an impact that is not great on people. And an immature leader would probably avoid making those decisions and try to worry too much about being nice and being perceived as the friendly and the good and the likable leader, which can actually risk making the impact even worse in the long run. And a mature leader is able to have compassion for the people on the team, the people being impacted and the people who aren't immediately impacted, to think about what's best for everyone and what's best for the organization. So I think applying a mindset of organization first, then team itself, is a good marker of a mature leader. Worrying about likability and niceness is pretty immature.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, it's like you take a founder, right? I mean, I don't know, take somebody who had this brilliant idea to store stuff in the cloud in their dorm room at MIT, right? And to get people around them to buy into that, to ultimately form an organization and a small team that then scales and grows into a large organization, it does require being likable. Like, when you're trying to get just a few people to jump in and join you without a salary and maybe an equity stake, it does require that.
Is it just likability, though?
It's likability, it's conviction in the idea, obviously. But ultimately, if you're going to say, like, I'm going to follow that person, even though I don't have an immediate reward for that, and I'm playing the long game with that person, like, I do probably need to like that person to some extent. However, to your point, and by the way, I'm happy to spar with you on this. I think there becomes this point where the likability becomes neutral and then becomes a liability, potentially, right? And I always got this advice. I mean, I think about my own trajectory as a leader, and the many, many, many learnings that I've had and continue to have. A lot of it is putting people first, then strategy, structure, and process, right? Because then what happens is, even though it sounds great, you start to solve the organizational challenges and the structure and the operating model around specific people, as opposed to what my colleague Mike Bleedorn, one of our executive coaches at AIR, taught me. It goes strategy, structure, process, people. So strategy, structure, process, people, in that order. And that's how you build a mature organization. But likability doesn't necessarily play a big role in that sequence.
I'd offer another framework. I love that one. Part of the reason why I'm here, by the way, I think you remember, I'm here to do a leadership program with some of our executives with Wharton Executive Education here in Philly, wonderful institution, and I got to be part of quite a few sessions that were really strong. One of the sessions I was in talked about followership, and the faculty member leading that session equated it in one framework down to three things: capability, credibility, and care.
Capability, 3 C's.
3 C's: capability, credibility, and care. And if you think about those three things and who you follow or who you will help or who you will lead you in your career or in life, there's probably one that matters more.
I would imagine care.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah. I trust you if I think that you know what you're doing.
Ultimately care.
I trust if you can do the job, but do you care about me as a person? And will I follow you because of that?
When we think about leadership and the future, what are the opportunities, but also some of the challenges that you foresee when it comes to artificial intelligence?
Well, I think in organizations that are trying to do things with artificial intelligence now and trying to experiment, we need people to just be better skilled at what it means to work alongside AI and how to use AI effectively. I think there are still some companies that are being a bit cautious about how to use AI inside their own ecosystems. and I worry that they'll fall behind because they're not helping their employees develop the skills to use it at work. And by the way, many employees are probably using the systems anyway because it's ubiquitous at this point.
Right.
So there's the human AI aspect that needs to be solved. For companies to be successful, I think they have to make it easy and provide training and provide guardrails.
So we're still early innings with AI, but it will get to that point where it meets and exceeds human intelligence comprehensively, and I think we're going to increasingly rely on it. But the one thing that it will never be able to do is to truly care, which at the heart of that is love, right? Right, and that's going to be impossible for AI to replicate. So I do appreciate the 3 C's that you mentioned, and care being a primary capability that arguably is above the other 2.
I think so. Personally, I think that's what makes us different and unique as humans. I think that's what leads us to follow people, even if they're tough, even if they have high standards. If we feel that they care about us and what's in our best interest, it's easier to apply discretionary effort to go above and beyond.
Yeah. It's I mean, it sounds like obvious, but in the complexity that we're in right now, and especially if I think about like tech, because to be in tech right now requires tons and tons of change, and that change can have like some real concrete implications to people. I mean, everybody in every industry is changing and transforming, and that oftentimes amounts to reductions in force. But like tech, it's nearly ubiquitous, right? It's just tremendous amounts of disruption with talent specifically.
It's a lot. And I think a lot of organizations are feeling the pace of change, the pace of innovation, where things can change overnight. And the people who are successful in that context are those that can keep up and stay at the pace of the organization and keep changing themselves so that they can stay relevant, which means doing the things to get the skills that they need to be effective with systems like AI or with other technologies or other skills that'll be even more relevant in the future.
So having been in sort of talent management, talent development for over a decade at least, right?
Yeah, it's crazy to say, but yes.
We're getting old. How has it changed, if it has at all? Like how has the job changed?
How has talent management changed? I think because on the leadership development side, because people have less time and they're under more pressure, we have to make what we deliver extremely relevant and actionable and high quality. Because if you can take out your phone and just ask whatever assistant you choose to give you like the step-by-step process of setting a strategic narrative for your organization or communicating a vision or rallying the team, what's the point of a leadership development workshop? So we have to do things that are attuned to the needs of the people and the organization and extremely relevant. We have to be using the latest technology or else we look like dinosaurs. If we don't have things that are built or incorporating AI, then I think we're missing something. On the talent management side, I think we just have access to a lot more information now, and we need to help organizations think about how they can make talent management strategies and people decisions that are fair and equitable and leveraging all of the data so that they can be objective and step out of this world of bias that performance or other things can often be riddled with.
Okay. Well, as two passionate executive assessment geeks, I am curious to ask you, like, because part of your role is succession planning and thinking about potential. Like, how do you think about potential, and how do you go about measuring it in your role? Because at the end of the day, that is what presumably can help mitigate this risk of bias.
I think to be really good at understanding potential or measuring potential, you need to have a strong point of view about what you think you need in the future. So a good baseline to then measure talent against. I don't think every organization is there yet. I think a lot are still trying, but you can think of the large established organizations who are quite good. GE, for example, exceptional at their talent work. And if you can identify what you need, then you can start assessing those skills or capabilities or aptitudes, behaviors in the population to have some sort of a data-informed view of potential. If you want to simplify it, I think potential is really just agility and making sure that you stay relevant, get the skills that you need, continue to focus on where the company is headed, and adapt and disrupt yourself while the company is doing the same.
So meaning it's not necessarily adapting yourself to some target profile per se. It's really at the core of that, it's being adaptable, knowing that things are always moving. Like it's not like change is continuous. And so how do I meet change where it's at, which is continuous?
Yeah. And how do I have strong opinions held loosely about where we're headed? Because you need to be able to let go of some of those
strong
things.
Opinions held loosely. You know, the more I, you know, if I kind of step back and do like a meta reflection on our conversation, there's a lot of sort of paradoxes in what we've talked about, right? Like a place like Cisco, you were describing like maturity, which when I think of maturity, I think about like thoughtfulness. Rather than like just being reactive and reflexive and just pulling out the playbook that got us to where we are and continuing to drive it. There's this notion of sort of reflective leadership and mature leadership, but then there's this idea that like if we're not agile enough, like it might be game over, right? Do you find that these paradoxes are like amplified, you know, as a function of you know, AI and innovation and the ever increasing pace of change?
Sure. Yeah. Why not? I think so. Sounds right.
Sounds right. So I guess like how do you stay grounded and resilient in the face of like constant change and having to negotiate or synthesize between these two competing, you know, between two polarities?
This is a good question, and it came up recently at work. We were having a meeting, and we had a debrief about how we handle change or get through it. And what I shared with the team there, first, I try to focus on what's not changing, what's still true, to find some sense of stability and some sense of control.
Right, because you could easily just be like, everything changing.
Feels and like it's changing
then
all
you're
the
just
time.
in a total swirl all the time. So like pinpointing like what are the things that are actually stable?
True.
Okay.
Yes, that's one. The second part, I think, is hard, but a lot of us can tie our identity to what we do for work. And when what we do for work changes overnight, it can feel pretty earth-shattering. So trying to ground yourself in who you are and your values and your identity as a person outside of work and the value that you bring to the world that you're in, to remind you that you are still you and you are still successful and you will still add value. No matter the context that you're in and no matter what changes tomorrow, you are still someone that's worth it.
That's such good advice. It's such good advice. Yeah, I think about we've recently had Peter Capelli on the podcast, and he talks a lot about like the old agreement where the employee and employer had this agreement of loyalty and bond that was very longitudinal, like 20, 30, 40, your entire life, years in the organization, and you grew, and your kid then worked in that organization. And now we live in a world where you could be doing a great job and company restructures and like, boom, your key card stops working.
And it feels so personal.
And it feels so personal because you naturally merge your identity with, you know, your personal identity with your work identity.
We spend most of our waking hours at work.
Which is wild. But I think this is, I mean, we have to be passionate and dedicated and devoted workers, but if we lose sight of who we are and our identity and just enmesh ourselves with our work identity, we're at major risk in this modern world. Okay. I want to, there's a lot of folks who listen to this podcast that are really into talent development, leadership development, coaching, and activating performance of people, of leaders specifically. AI has come onto the scene. It's influencing and touching everything. What are you seeing right now in terms of AI's application in this world of leadership development? And where do you think the puck is going?
I don't have a crystal ball, so I'm not sure where the puck is going, but I do think it's
Do you want to borrow my crystal ball?
Yes, please. Could you get it?
It's shattered.
Of course. I think AI is helping humans do meaningful work faster. And if we're using AI skillfully, we can be even more effective than we already are, and we can have a larger impact on the organization. So as a leadership development or talent development professional, work side by side with AI, do drafting, pressure test agendas, design content, design workshops, do facilitation guides. Like, you can have all of the content creation there. You can start doing voice coaching. You can get AI to coach back to you now. You can video record yourself and get feedback. You can use simulations that are powered by AI. You can even have AI do complicated, more complex tasks. There's so much out there that I think a lot of us still haven't really reached beyond the surface of what's possible, and I think there's a lot more for us to do.
I think it's, you said work side by side. I think that's key because one of the big buzzwords, at least this week, is work slop, if you've heard of that.
What is that?
It's like, I'm going to just delegate my stuff to AI. It's going to save me tons of time, and here's my output, and it's some...
But make sure that you check the output, though.
Make sure you check the output. But it is a partnership. It's this side-by-side relationship rather than I'm just going to feed a bunch of stuff into AI and, hey, check out my meeting agenda or my summary of this meeting, or here's a deck, because, garbage in, garbage out. And ultimately, it's as I learned this term from Terry Maltbia, our ability to work in a hybrid-like manner, integrated with AI, hybrid intelligence, human intelligence, and artificial intelligence. That's going to really be where we get the most gain and benefit. So my last question then for you, before we wrap up, any advice for somebody who's just like starting out right now, right? Somebody who is... they've been in a cave the last 2.5 years, like ChatGPT, what? And they're like, oh my God, I've got to figure this AI thing out. I've got to figure out how to integrate this if I'm going to succeed in this modern world that we find ourselves in. Like, what advice would you give to that individual?
I would say try things that you just don't think are possible with AI. Push yourself out of your own sort of mind comfort zone. You can obviously do what we talked about here, do my emails, check my calendar, automate these repetitive tasks for me, but go bigger and try to stretch the limits of AI as you're getting used to it so that you can be surprised by what it's actually capable of. I think that's always the most eye-opening experience for me when I see someone who's truly an expert demo what's capable with AI. They're doing way more than I've ever done with it, and it's inspiring. So just try to push the limits of yourself and of the tools that are available to you, and try to learn as much as you can.
I absolutely love that. Yeah, I mean, I think, we see AI as a technology, and technology we think of as like coding and technical stuff and the stuff that like IT owns, and I'm a beneficiary of their knowledge and wisdom and specialized skill, but the actual engagement, that's not me. I'm a recipient. But actually, like, the beauty is that you actually can just jump in and, you can code an application. But you can't if you don't allow yourself the freedom and the leap and have the courage to experiment and to dive in and to, like you said, stretch yourself.
Yeah.
So that seems to be, I talk a lot about curiosity as being like the super skill. And I still believe that, but I also think there's something about like pushing yourself, right? Like you take it one step further, like iterate that problem, like ask it to work harder, ask it to make it even better, right? So I think that's really good advice.
I hope so.
Yeah.
If it's not, don't let me know. I hope it was great advice and everybody's successful.
Well, Reese, it is amazing to have you here in our hometown in Philadelphia, and I really appreciate you so much, sharing your wisdom and experiences with us on a podcast about leadership. And Reese Haydon, everybody, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right.